we hear the word power and we think we are taught as women that's a negative thing for us, that it means we're to something that's very unsavory. And power is really just connection to yourself and your truth and connection to what you want. Because if you know who you are and you understand what your values are and you develop the courage to express that in the world, there is no greater power than that.
You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 401 with guest Susan Hyatt. Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am so glad that you're here. I am double excited for today's episode. And the first reason is because this is on video. Some of you might already be watching it on video. Hello on YouTube. And I don't think I've ever done this. Maybe I have. This is episode 401. Maybe I have in the past, but it's super exciting. These 8 episodes, this is the other reason I'm so excited. This episode kicks off an 8-episode series that I am calling just Make Some Noise. It's the Make Some Noise series on the Make Some Noise podcast. I handpicked 8 phenomenal women who I know are making noise in their lives. And I wanted to ask them specifically, how did you do it? What's your story? Can you give us any tips and tricks? Were you raised differently? Do you implement things now in adulthood that help you show up in your life fully and confidently? And I cannot wait for you to either watch or listen to them all. I also wanted to remind you that I have some amazing book bonuses. The one that I want to talk to you about today is a book plate. So if you're watching this on video, here they are. They're super cute. I know that they're backwards, but these are essentially stickers. You may have gotten these from another author. Because we cannot do live in-person events right now, this is the next best thing, to have your book personally signed by me. It's free. I will snail mail it to you. If you've already purchased the book, if you've already pre-ordered it and you've already signed up for bonuses, you should have seen it in there as one of the options to fill out your address and your first name and all that good stuff. If you missed it, go to andreaowen.com/MSN, or you can use the contact form on my website and Emily or someone on my team will absolutely help you out so we can get that mailed off to you. So you can have a personalized signed copy of my book. And it drops August 31st. It might ship earlier. I don't know. I can't promise. COVID has really screwed things up. But August 31st is the official birthday. Speaking of birthdays, the day that this particular podcast drops, episode 401 comes out on August 11th, which is my son's birthday. He's 14. All the seasoned parents out there who say it goes by so fast, and that feels really annoying when your kids are little and they're toddlers and it's just so hard and you're not getting very much sleep and you are working your butt off to be a parent. I get it now. I get it. My daughter will be 12 next month. My son is turning 14 today. And I don't know if this is coincidence or what. Last week, I had a dream that I was pregnant. So I'm 46. I think the chances of that happening are very low, especially because my husband has a vasectomy and he's the only man I'm sleeping with, which is good. Which is good to know. So in my dream, so vivid. Okay. So in my dream, don't you love hearing about people's dreams? I know it can be the most boring thing ever, but it's kind of funny. Stay with me. In my dream, I'm very pregnant. I'm like, I don't know, about 6 or 7 months pregnant. And I am so excited about it. I am so excited that we're going to have a baby. And my husband, on the other hand, is floored. Just like, what? So he's had a vasectomy for, I don't know, 9 years now. And we were at the doctor's office and the doctor said, didn't anybody tell you that this can happen, that there's some breakthrough cases? That's what he called it. And I know I had that dream because we're hearing about breakthrough cases of vaccinated people, breakthrough cases, breakthrough pregnancies. He's like, yeah, it happens. And I was like, yes. I mean, I whatever. But in my dream, I was very excited that we were having a baby. And I was like, oh, I wonder if it's going to be a girl, it's going to be a boy. All just tickled. And my husband was having a little bit of a hard time getting used to it. So when I woke up, I had a good chuckle about it. My husband and I had a good laugh. Oh, and also in my dream, one more thing. I told my husband, I totally understand if you want to take a paternity test. Like I would be weirded out too. And like wondering, I won't be mad. I just wanted to get that out of the way. I was like, I get it. It's weird. And I would be a little concerned as well, but I didn't have to worry because I knew in my dream, I'm like, I'm only sleeping with you. Of course, Mari Povich is going to say, you're the father, and we'd be fine. So I woke up and we had a good laugh about it. And I thought, I wonder if this is because I'm about to give birth to this book, metaphorically speaking, obviously. But it does, it feels like such a huge thing coming into the world that as an author, we spend so much time and there's so many moving parts and so many people that help put this together. And I also think that this book in particular takes a little bit of a right turn, I would say, not so much a left turn, but a right turn. And I am focusing more on what I am passionate about. And that is the socialization and conditioning that we've all received for people who identify as girls and women. And we need to talk about it. We need to unlearn it. We need to unpack and unravel it because it's doing us dirty. And that's what this book is about. It's women's empowerment from a feminist foundation. I can't wait for you to listen or read it, whichever you prefer. And I think that's it as far as the announcements. I won't go on and on about this book. I know that you've heard a lot about it. I'm really excited. So I have Susan Hyatt on the show today. Susan's been on, I think, at least 3 times, and she's a dear friend of mine as well as a colleague. And when I was thinking about this particular series and thinking about the women I wanted to have on it, Susan was at the very top of that list to have on. So for those of you that don't know, I am going to tell you a little bit about her. Susan Hyatt is a master's certified life and business coach specializing in helping women get more of whatever they want: more money, more confidence, more energy, more joy. Through her 2 mastermind programs, On the 6 and the Mastermind, Susan has worked with thousands of women to scale their businesses and step into 6- and 7-figure earnings. The leading voice of ditching diet culture to develop a better world, she has developed the trademark BEAR process, is the best-selling author of BEAR, and has presented at TEDx Fargo. So without further ado, here is Susan. Susan Hyatt's back on the show.
I am ready to live my kick-ass life with you.
Well, the podcast has changed names. I don't know if you knew that.
What are you doing to me?
I know.
Name of it now.
Okay. Well, as we're recording this, it's going to happen like within the next few days, and it's going to be Make Some Noise.
Yes. Oh my God. I can see all the merchandise. I am living for this.
I am so excited to make this change and this book and everything. And so I created this series, this Make Some Noise series, as a celebration of my book coming out and just a celebration of women. I handpicked 8 women. You are one of them. And I'm ready to jump in and talk to everybody about how they can make some more noise in their life.
You know what? I am here for it. Let's make so much noise. I'm like hoarse, like let's like exhausted and hoarse and like dragging into home plate. I'm here.
Okay. So I know that you are a huge fan of women asking for everything they want.
Yes.
It's like number 1 on your to-do list every day.
No, number 1. It's like, who can do this for me? Like, what am I leaving on the table? Like, what ask am I not making?
Okay. So I'm curious if there was a time in your life where you weren't that woman who asks for everything that you want.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you do to reckon with that and become the person that asks for everything?
Well, let me be clear. There are still times, and I have a hilarious story from the other day of when I notice I'm not asking. So it's not like 100% of the time I'm perfectly asking for everything that I need, but I have come so far. And so the woman that I was prior, was a woman who probably, like many of your listeners, I had checked all the boxes. I thought I had done everything right. I went to school and got married and had children and got the career, check, and was doing everything for everyone else and managing the universe, and at the expense of my own hopes, dreams, mental health, physical health, all those things. And I was in residential real estate at the time when I really had this sort of breakdown in my kitchen. My mom was coming to visit for Easter, and she made me promise, because I was such a workaholic, that I would not work while she visited. And I promised her, okay, I promise I'm taking that time
in real
off.
estate, you're on all the time.
You theoretically are supposed to be on all the time. I mean, you are supposed, I can remember saying to my therapist at the time that if she was like, well, what if you could, this is back when we had Blackberries. She was like, what if you could just put your Blackberry like away in your purse or something for a half an hour? And I was like, you don't understand. If I miss a call, I'm missing a paycheck. Like that was the mentality. Mm-hmm. So I promised my mom. My mom comes to visit, and lo and behold, a family that I had been working with for months, out of town buyers, decided that since it was a holiday weekend, they would pop into town and want to make an offer on something I had shown them like a month prior. And so I got this page. Remember pagers?
Yes.
I got this
I had one.
pager message and called them, and they were like, surprise, we're in town and we want to put an offer on, 123 Happy Street. And I was faced with this reality that this was the biggest sale of my real estate career. And I went and on Easter got that contract signed and felt miserable and awful and terrible, shame-filled that I broke a promise to my mom, but wanted that sale. I wanted that commission. Mm-hmm. And I came home, and my mom looked at me, and as Southern mamas can do, only Southern mamas have, and she just looked at me and she was like, what has happened to my daughter? Like, you are not right. This is not who you are. And I just broke down in my kitchen crying because I couldn't ask for help. I couldn't ask for what I wanted. I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know what my core values were. And she said to me, hey, okay, like, stop the breakdown. I'll keep the kids for a couple of days. Why don't you just plan like whatever you want to do for you? Now, here's the real part of the story. I had no idea what I could do for me. The things that came to mind were I could grocery shop all by myself or catch up on the laundry. These were my big ideas. And it was at that cracking point, that moment, that I was like, okay, I got to figure out who I am. I got to figure out what I need. And I have to get over this overworking, over efforting, people pleasing stuff. And so I didn't have any concept of what it meant to ask for everything. That was so foreign to how I operated in the world.
Well, it sounds like you had like I need to get my shit together moment.
Yeah. For real. For real. I mean, I'm like, I spent like the next couple of days eating Peeps and crying.
I think you talked about this on another episode that you were on, and we'll pop that link in the show notes. That's when you hired a life coach and bought personal development books and kind of started your own journey.
Right.
That was like a couple
that was
ago.
15 years ago.
15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. With Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers inline and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. Get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point of sale system, or use Shopify's POS Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/noise, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/noise to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/noise. It's hard to find a great mentor who can help me level up. My dream mentor, Shonda Rhimes. So I was really excited when I heard she has a class on Masterclass. With Masterclass, you can learn from the best to become your best. Masterclass is the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 plus of the world's best. For just $10 a month, an annual membership with Masterclass gets you unlimited access to every instructor. And you can access Masterclass on your phone, computer, smart TV, or even in audio mode. I'm always looking for ways to be a better writer, so I took Shonda Rhimes' screenwriting class. It helped me gain concrete technical advice, including structuring, the writing process, and with shows under her belt like Grey's Anatomy and Bridgerton, it was so helpful. Plus, every new membership comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Don't wait another moment to start your learning journey with Masterclass. Right now, our listeners get an additional 15% off any annual membership at masterclass.com/Andrea. That's 15% off at masterclass.com/Andrea. Masterclass.com/Andrea. Yeah, and I'm really glad that you were transparent and said I still have to remind myself to ask for everything, because it's the conditioning that the bulk of the book is about. Is like, it's not our fault that we don't ask for what we want, that we are afraid of shining too bright, that we struggle with money. Like, we've been conditioned to be this way. We're doing what we were taught.
Yeah.
And to break free from that, I find also that it's a lifelong process.
You're so right. It is a lifelong process. And here I am, the woman who teaches women to ask for everything. Here I am, the woman who, gets on podcasts or teaches classes about having boundaries with your family around your work and all these things. And let me tell you something. So my new obsession is my rescue beagle, Mork, the international sensation that is Mork the Beagle. I have a grand puppy named Caesar. The other day, here's an example of how I still wake up to constantly the invisible workload of women and how I'm still in it. So Mork and Caesar are they're puppies, and they like to race around, and you have to put them outside. And so they were outside making some noise, barking, acting bananas. And so I let them back inside. And like a toddler, I have to hold Mork the Beagle sometimes so that they'll realize they're tired and lay down. and so Ryan, my son, decides to drop Caesar without asking. I had a very long day. The dogs are racing through the house, acting bananas. And I'm like, go back outside. And then they would go outside and bark. And I'm like, and I would let them back inside and try to get them to calm down. So I sit down in my chair with Mork the Beagle, and I'm holding him so he'll relax and calm down. And Caesar flops on the rug and instantly falls asleep because they've worn each other out. And I look across the living room, and my husband is sitting on the sofa eating a Snickers bar and scrolling on his smartphone. Okay. And I'm sitting there with my beagle in a headlock, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I start yelling across the room. I'm like, here we are again, just like when the kids were little. Like, I'm doing everything I can to get everybody just to settle down. And it was of zero concern to him what these dogs were doing. Zero concern.
And just that audacity, like, I admire that. Can I get some of that? Where do I buy it?
And his response, and this is often what happens when women start to push back on the invisible workload, his response was like, well, I don't have a problem with them barking or racing around the house. You know, like, I don't see a problem. You're just overreacting. You know, that sort of, right? That face right there. I'm like, oh, I'm about to show you some overreacting. So I was like, I'm like, okay, like, they're yours for the rest of the evening. They're absolutely yours. And so then it was like a circus act, like hilarious watching him attempt to do, you know, what I do. And it's such a silly little example with dogs, but this carries through with everything, with managing the household and children and prescriptions and education.
If it was just the dogs, it would not be that big of a deal.
Right.
But it's the mountain that piles up and just bleeds out into everywhere.
Right. Here I am reminded of how insidious it's in the air we breathe. It's how we were raised. It's like, of course, I'm just going to assume that responsibility for these animals. So I'm texting my son. I'm like, come get your dog.
Right? Come get your baby.
Come get Caesar, because he needs to go home now.
Time's up. Okay. Well, let's talk about money and power, which I know is also on the top of your to-do list.
I love that you said it that way. Check. That is at the top of my to-do list.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Well, and I know a large part of your work is empowering women through economic means.
Yeah.
And I feel, it's my opinion, that women struggle with money partly because of the power involved in it, whether that's, you know, asking for more money at work, raising your rates if you're a service provider, you know, all the things. And so let's talk about, like, I want to know, how does Susan Hyatt define power? Let's start there.
I define power as connection to self. We hear the word power and we think, we are taught as women that that's a negative thing for us, that it means we're to something that's very unsavory. And power is really just connection to yourself and your truth, and connection to what you want. Because if you know who you are and you understand what your values are, and you develop the courage to express that in the world, there is no greater power than that. But we do live in a world where, in order for us to have a seat at the table, have the ability to elect officials that will advocate for us and all those things, that takes money. And so the more money a woman can have, the more practical power she can flex.
Agreed. It was interesting when I was doing the research for that chapter, and I did not set out to write about power at all. I started writing about money and have never written about money in either of my two previous books. But I felt like, if I'm going to talk about the culture that raised us and the things that are holding us back, you have to talk about money.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
And when I started writing about it, I started realizing, and I'm like, it is so interlaced with power, and who's written about this before me, where I can research. And so there's not a whole lot written about women in power. There's one great book, and I also read Susie Orman's Women in Money, which it was very interesting. And so that's why I love to get other women's take who have experience feeling more comfortable, both with money as well as power. And in the book, I talk about, Brene Brown talks about power and talking about the differences between power over versus power within. Because what we have examples of largely in this capitalistic culture is power over, and people wielding it to not do great things. Or we think that's the only way to get there. So we choose proximity to it and try to be more like men, when oftentimes that's not our inherent nature and not how we really want to be deep inside with our values. So it's complicated. I'm still very much in the infancy of learning about it myself.
Yeah. I think we all are.
Yeah. It's super fascinating. Let's continue to talk about money and what are some things that you see women doing that hold them back from making more money that they can work on?
You're right. I work with women every day on this. It comes up with the entrepreneurs that I work with. And typically when I'm working with a female entrepreneur, she's undercharging. She's either not charging or undercharging or over efforting to get that money. And working with a female entrepreneur, it often sounds like, well, do you really think people would pay that? And I don't know. And is it too much? And what will people think? And all that kind of stuff. And I'm working on a project with my Snickers eating, dog ignoring husband, Scott Hyatt.
You're doing a partnership with Snickers?
Yeah, we're doing a partnership. But we're working on this project called Women Invested because he has spent his career in commercial real estate and development. And only 1% of assets managed are female owned, which drives me crazy. And so it's been a long time coming. We're working on this project together where I want to get information to women on how to do this because it's an old white man's club. Like most women, and particularly Black women or women of color, have no idea. We've not been included in the conversation of how to do these things or who to go to. And so when I sat down with him one Sunday and I said, let's just brainstorm what all the topics of the videos and audios would be. And so it was fun, like coming up with that stuff. But once we got it all put together and I started talking about the different ways we could price it, I was like, okay, so there could be sort of this classic level where they get access to these videos and this membership community, and it's this price. And then we could have more of a VIP level where they could ask you questions, they could have consults with you, that sort of thing. And he listened to everything I had to say. Let's say I said $997 to $1,497. And he kind of looked at me and he was like, okay, so this information is very valuable and I'm not showing up for anything less than a couple $1,000s. And he looked at me like I was crazy.
To even think that it had to be less than that.
And the energy, and it actually wasn't arrogant. I mean, I'm saying it kind of arrogantly, but he was just sort of like, oh, and if you want me to show up for like Facebook Q&As, then it's this. Like, what? The difference in the confidence and the owning of like what the value of the service was so dramatically different. I had to go into all my groups and tell the story because I'm like, they are raised with such privilege and entitlement that they value that is why they ask for the raise, they go for the gig,
negotiate from the get-go.
Yes, they have no shame in it. And women are taught not to ask for too much. Like, how dare you negotiate? Like, who does she think she is? And all that kind of stuff that just is not present in their world. It's unbelievable to me.
I love that story so much. And I don't know if you've seen, there's this thing going on. There's, oh shoot, I don't remember her name. There's a Black woman who's a coach, and her whole brand is like, think like Chad or ask like Chad or something like that, where she creates this persona. And maybe you could do that in your groups. Like, be more like Scott, your husband.
Have a Snickers.
What would Scott do?
And upcharge, it's just like, he was just sitting across the kitchen table looking at me like, and I also remember similarly, I asked him one time when I was doing a training on asking for the sale. And I said, do you ever in your mind, do you ever get nervous about asking for the sale, or do you ever hesitate? And when I say that man looked at me like I had three heads, he was like, what do you mean? And I was like,
oh my God.
Yeah. And I was like, I said, do you ever worry that there's a problem with asking for the sale. And he was like, what else would I do? That's my job. And I just was like, okay, like we as women have got to drop.
I would have been like, what's that like?
I know. I was so fascinated. He was just sort of like, okay, I don't, it doesn't compute. I don't understand this question. So I do think it's like our work is really unwinding the cultural rules we've been taught and we've accepted and seeing them for what they are and learning how to challenge those.
Well, I want to say this too. So it's easy for you and I to sit here and tell women, just be more like Scott, be more like Chad, go ask for the sale, negotiate when you get a new job, et cetera, et cetera. However, I think the thing that stops them is that the worry about how we are going to be perceived is so real that it elicits shame in our bodies and just puts the brakes on everything. So I invite women to just get curious about it. Like if they're listening to this and they're having judgments about Scott or about you or about any woman that they see either in movies or online, like the way that we vilify wealthy women in movies, like wealthy and successful movies, I wrote about it in the book because I was thinking about my own history with money and the money stories that my family handed down to me. And I thought to myself, who was the first wealthy woman I ever saw on TV and movies? And because there's stats that say that, you know, the majority of women millionaires are, or maybe this is an old stat, but it was like they've either married into it, inherited it, you know, that type of thing. And I remembered that it was when I was very young, maybe 6 or 7, and you're my age. So do you remember those records? They were like little records and they came with a book and you would play the record and then it would make like a chiming noise when it was time to turn the page. And it was like old school audiobooks.
Yeah, I loved those. Yes.
I had several. And one of my favorites was Fox and the Hound and 101 Dalmatians.
Oh, yeah. I know where you're going.
Cruella de Vil was the first wealthy woman I ever knew about. It was always men. It was, you know, Daddy Warbucks and always white men. And so Cruella de Vil is this evil, ugly woman who does the ultimate horrendous act. She kills and skins puppies.
I know.
And some people might be like, well, it's just a Disney movie. Like, does it really matter that much? It does.
It does matter. It absolutely matters.
It creates an impression about what it means to be wealthy, to be ambitious, to ask for everything you want. I don't think you should ask for puppies to kill them.
right?
You know, when you're listening to a song on the radio and you get the profound feeling that the song playing was written about you? Now imagine having the power to gift that same incredible feeling to someone you love with an original song from Songfinch that actually is written just for them. Songfinch lets you create an original radio quality song inspired by your own life and the people you love. It's completely unique, personal, and lasts forever. Whether your song is for Father's Day, an upcoming graduation, wedding, or anniversary, or even just a gift to show your loved one how much you care, start your song now to lock in one of Songfinch's top artists. I gifted Songfinch to myself, a song about my late father, and I'm so excited to play you a clip.
Flipping through the slides of learning how to live and how to love, and coming undone a father, daughters without, so she writes it down.
One of my clients heard about Songfinch from this podcast, and so she had a song created for her son who is graduating, and she told me that they both cried when she played it for him and that it exceeded her expectations. For a limited time, Songfinch is letting our listeners upload their song to Spotify for free, so you and the lucky person you gift it to can listen to it anywhere, anytime. Go to songfinch.com/noise and start your song. After you purchase, you'll be prompted to add Spotify streaming for your original song for free, a $50 value. Again, my URL is songfinch.com/noise. Don't forget to share your song with us too. songfinch.com/noise.
I'd like to introduce you to the Minimalist Moms podcast. It's hard enough being a mom, and the last thing you need is stress from too much stuff and an overcrowded schedule. For too long, I lived with the mindset that bigger was better, and the more I added to my life, instead of feeling better, I felt overwhelmed. It was time for a radical new mindset. Less is more. I'm not into extremes. I didn't throw everything away. My brand of minimalism is more about adding than subtracting. Get rid of the excess to make room for what you love. In other words, it's about living life with purpose. I hope you'll listen in and my guest and myself can inspire you to think more and do with less. The Minimalist Moms Podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
But I mean, to your point, right? Like when you look at the book, the characters that girls are exposed to at a young age, and like the Disney princesses and characters, I mean, it's up until recently, the role models were, needed to be saved or had to sacrifice or lose parts of themselves to get the prince or whatever it might be as the ultimate
Often
goal.
orphaned, didn't have a mom. Mm-hmm.
Cruella de Vil came to mind as soon as before you even mentioned it. And also like, look at Devil Wears Prada, look at, popular movies and things. And I'm waiting for the Hallmark Christmas movie where
I know you love those.
I love cheesy stuff half the time. I'm like, just let yourself be corny. But I'm waiting for the storyline. I'm waiting for the plot where the big city female executive doesn't ditch her career for a small town, baker, because she's realized the error of her ways of being so ambitious in the big city. I'm waiting.
You need to hire someone to write that screenplay. So she meets a man or a woman that she falls in love with, and then that person leaves their job to come and work, or just be her like trophy wife or husband.
Totally. And my friend Melissa writes screenplays, so I'm going to get her on that. I'm going to be like, okay, here's the new project.
Here's the new Hallmark movie. I would watch that. I don't watch those.
I would too. And there's even on Netflix, Firefly Lane. Have you seen that?
I've seen it on my Netflix. Yeah.
And
I haven't watched it.
There's two female characters. One, quit her career and was a stay-at-home mom. They're best friends. And the other one went hardcore career. And of course, the one who went hardcore career is the one that's like all messed up, has a drinking problem. There's like all this stuff that goes on with her because she hasn't dealt with her trauma. And it's like, wow. I mean, here we are again.
They're not setting us up to win.
No.
There's been some progress, but it is very slow.
Right.
It's very slow.
I agree.
Well, let's talk about, because I know on a previous episode, you came and told us the story about, because you've dealt with a lot of mean girl situations and haters out there who comment on your Facebook ads, who send you private messages, who are just terrible to you. One of the things I wrote about in the book, I gave a story from another colleague of mine, McKenna Held, and she had similar experiences to yours. And what this comes down to, unfortunately, is internalized misogyny, internalized sexism. And it was one of those things when I learned about, personally, I was like, oh, damn, I do this too.
Yeah.
The slut shaming that I've done in the past, the, mean girl stuff that always felt like shit, but I did it anyway. Realizing that it was my own internalized misogyny was a sinking feeling and something I'm still unpacking today. So I would love to hear you talk about that and maybe even your own internalized sexism and misogyny that you've had to unpack.
It's a daily thing. Fortunately, my team looks at most of it and they'll send me some of the examples that they think I might think is funny or want to comment on
that are more tame.
But it is interesting that it's really a study in, when I look at, we've had such consistent vitriol on Facebook ads that we can, like, I honestly am researching this, that they're primarily women that are middle-aged, leaning conservative, that want me to cover up, that like what I have to say, but they don't like how I look while I'm saying it.
And what are you, just so people know, like because they're pretty strict about Facebook ads. Like you can't.
I am covered there. So I was in one of them, I was wearing a suit. So I'm covered from head to toe, but I was like looking over my shoulder. So people were like, oh, what is this? Like a butt lift ad? What is happening here? And then one where you can see from my kneecap down, people calling me a prostitute, like cover up. One, my team actually photoshopped a camisole so that there was on me, so there was no cleavage showing, and it was still like, then it was like, oh, she's had so much Botox, fillers, and all this stuff. Which what's interesting, and I'm not against either one of those things, but I've not had any of that done. So it's just interesting. It's like the insults are like, oh, she must do something unsavory to get business. Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it sounds like it's always about your appearance.
It's always about my appearance, right? It's never about what I'm actually saying. And then the new crop of stuff are like 20-something males who want to mansplain the message. So they like how I look, but they don't like what I'm saying. And so it's so interesting because I'm like, are these the sons of the other group, right? It's
maybe,
you know what I mean? It's like generation wise, it's the, like, these are guys that like, they're probably backpacking, they're rock climbing, they're bros that are like, I don't think this actually exists. I don't think the wage gap is a thing. I don't think, oh yeah, that kind of stuff. So I have these two camps. And so it's misogyny. It's two sides of the same coin. And so when I look at that, yes, I'm able to see it for what it is. And then I also, like you're saying, I can also identify it in myself where, like, particularly what you mentioned, slut shaming was something that I didn't even know I was doing until maybe say like 8 years ago. My daughter, Cora, who's only 20 now, but she has always been like this little beacon of justice and has brought me along on social issues. Like, she's just light years ahead of where I am with things, to the point that she was actually telling me that a roommate of hers, that there are five housemates in this house at college. And there's one roommate that particularly slut shames the rest of them. You know, so if they're all talking about their sexual experiences, this one housemate has a real problem with it. And she was telling her boyfriend that she just could not believe that they are proud of their sexual experiences. And so my daughter is telling me, like, she's slut shaming us. So my daughter made these earrings, and one says slut and one says whore. She sent me a picture and she's like, do you like my new earrings? And honestly, I was sort of like, oh, yeah, they're great.
Right.
You know? And so I still have a ways to go with certain things, but I definitely, like, we could talk about like purity rings and why are these boys not wearing these? And I actually told my mother, we have a family member that was wearing a purity ring. And I'm like, I need to talk to her because she needs to be having sex and lots of it. And my mom was like, well, I don't know about that. And I was like, well, I do, because, you know, what? Anyway, yeah, slut shaming is, I think, kind of like one of my final frontiers of recognizing, like, wow, I've really bought into in the past this idea of that a woman should save herself and not be promiscuous.
And the more people you have slept with, what do they call it? What are the kids calling it? Body count? I think that's what it's called.
Oh, is
like
it?
The amount of people that you've slept with, like, the higher that is, the lower your value.
Watch me text Cora. I'll be like, what's your body count, friend?
What's your body count? I mean, I honestly hope that my hope for my children and my daughter, you know, she's only 11, so this is not a thing yet, but just have as much sex as you want and protect yourself, and also go to therapy.
Yeah.
I still think sex is emotional.
Yeah, no, I think that is wise advice. And I think that's something else that women, when they're thinking about power, their own power, thinking about it in terms of mental health. Wealth, to me, is a lot of different things other than just money. And mental health is one of those things for sure.
I want to mention that really quick because that reminds me of something you told me. It was maybe, I don't know, it was in 2020. And so 2019, I was in a mastermind that you led and I had my best year ever.
Yay.
I signed a huge contract with Penguin Random House. I made a lot of money. We decided Jason would leave his job. And then March 2020, when my husband did leave his job, COVID happened.
Yeah.
And I had, I mean, what in the olden days they would call a nervous breakdown. And I laugh about it now. It was not funny at the time. It was really difficult. And I've talked about it on another podcast episode. My mental health was suffering, and it had come to a head from years and years of trauma that wasn't totally dealt with. And so I hired a therapist. I went into intense trauma therapy, and I was looking at the numbers and I'm like, oh, I'm going to make less money than I did in 2019. And it would have been the first year that I didn't have an increase. And I remember talking to you about it, and you said, you know, there are so many measures of success. Money is just one of them. And if your mental health is what you make a priority this year, like you're still winning. I remember feeling so much better after that. I was like, that's true, because I can't continue to support my family financially if my head's a mess.
Yeah.
It was such a great thing to say. And I just wanted to, again, tell you how much I appreciated that.
That makes me tear up. I really believe that. And I think we can, especially talking about money and power, I think we can fall into this trap of measuring how well we're doing on our bank accounts and our investments and all those things. And it's like, there are so many measures that it's like, you know, how much delight did you experience? How much connection did you feel? How much creativity did you experience? I mean, to me, there's so many things, and I love money, but not at the expense of all the other things.
Yeah. Well, speaking of pleasure and joy and sex, and I write in the book about the orgasm gap, which is maybe a different topic for
Oh my God, I love that so much. I need a t-shirt.
It's not my term. I wrote in the book who coined that term. It was a researcher. They researched heterosexual sex, and basically men are getting off a lot more than women are. Anyway, so let's talk about pleasure, because I know, and we're not just talking about orgasms. I know when you're talking about pleasure. And what do you think stands in the way for women? Well, let me just have you talk about pleasure, because I know it's your thing. So I want to know specifically, what do you think stands in the way, and how can women get more of it?
So pleasure, in my opinion, is the secret magic sauce to everything that you want, because we're raised to believe that we need more willpower, you know, no pain, no gain. You can't run with the big dog, stay on the porch, and all that kind of nonsense. And what I know for sure is that everything you think you will get from like this white knuckling willpower, you actually get much faster and in a much more delightful way by prioritizing and becoming devoted to your own pleasure. And so, like you said, intimacy, orgasms, physical touch, that's just one category of pleasure. And let me tell you something. I mean, I told y'all about eating Peeps on Easter weekend and having a nervous breakdown about my life. Like, this was not something I was practicing. I had to learn this and learn that that there's, yes, there's physical pleasure, but there's intellectual pleasure, and there is aesthetic pleasure, and there's spiritual pleasure, and, you know, all these realms of pleasure that, you know, some women will say, well, I experience pleasure. You know, I take bubble baths, or I go get mani-pedis or whatever. And it's like diversifying your pleasure and really making sure that everything from the journal that you use to the quality of your sleep to the food that you eat, everything is pleasurable for you. We think we have to earn it. You know, we're raised to think like, you work first, play later, you know, eat your veggies and then have dessert. Like, you don't deserve it and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, no. Let's put all that, let's front load pleasure, and then everything else work so much better.
Yes. And I want to point people to your book too, because this is where you dig in and help people go through a step-by-step process. And the book is Bare, and we'll put that link in the show notes. And I just want to thank you so much for being here. This has been so fun.
Oh my gosh, this is what I could talk to you forever. So
A lot of people say that about me.
I love you so much. And I am
a good time.
So excited about the work you're doing in this book.
Thank you. And tell people where you want them to go to learn more about you.
You could go to my website. The hub is shyatt.com. I'm also very active on Instagram at Susan Hyatt.
Yes, you are.
So check me out.
Check her out. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. You know how grateful I am for your time. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey there. Thank you so much for sticking with us through the entirety of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And just a reminder, if you have not pre-ordered your copy of Make Some Noise, it is available on Amazon, online. You can pre-order it in Audible, and it will be in bookstores August 31st, but it would be extraordinarily helpful if you pre-ordered it. You can find all the info at AndreaOwen.com/noise. You can pick and choose where you want to pre-order it. And that is also where you can grab all the fantastic bonuses: the workbook, the book plate, the free book club, a chance to win some fabulous prizes, including my other book signed and personalized to you, free coaching, gift cards, so many amazing things. Head on over to AndreaOwen.com/noise, and I thank you so much for your support. See you next week.
Oh, hey, everybody. It's us, Blair and Molly, your old pals from Toddler Purgatory. Two moms who are also actors, who are also creative beings, who sometimes feel stuck. And this is our new podcast, Unsticking It with Blair and Molly. What happens when your creative spark just seems to disappear? Gone. Poof. Bye. See ya. What happens when life gets in the way of your creativity instead of nourishing it? That's what happened to Molly and me. We felt like the thing that drove us creatively stopped working, and impending doom had in fact impended.
Totally. So we decided to do something about it. And that was steal ideas about getting unstuck from the most creative people we can find. We talked to guests about how to break through the mucky, gluey, sticky wall that can get between you and your creativity. We hear about their journeys, their successes, their challenges, and even their bougie coffee shop orders.
And we're not just talking Bob Ross type paint on paper artists here, though we talk to them too. We're talking to actors, creative directors, dancers, and people who are working hard to be their best creative selves in a world that can sometimes feel real uncreative.
We all have something to teach each other, so let's steal their ideas together.
Join us, won't you, as we deep dive into how to unstick ourselves from the life gunk that can get in the way of our creative freedom. Pandemics, school calendars,
world events, lack of sleep. Oh, get out of their life gunk.
And let's get back to your best creative self. Subscribe to Unsticking It with Blair and Molly.
You're not going to want to miss an episode.
Unsticking It with Blair and Molly, because sometimes life sucks.
Unsticking